So you'll just have to join me for a couple minutes extra because YouTube has been way weird this morning. So I'm here a couple minutes live. I'll give you guys like plenty of time to come and join me. I won't start the main part of my video until 9 o'clock as promised. I apologize, I'm here early. For those of you that were waiting till 9 o'clock, I'll give you guys 5 more minutes to join me before we start talking about the meat and potatoes of my video. I am Mary from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and I try to go live on YouTube once a week. Hey, Esther's daughter, thanks for joining me. Today's live chat is just a Q&A. I've had lots of questions from customers, so I wanted to address some of those as well. Hey, Monica, thanks for joining me. I know I'm a little early, but YouTube was super weird. So first of all, can you see me? Am I clear? Hey, Jenny, thanks for joining me. And number 2, can you hear me and am I clear? Hey, Agape Field. Last week, for some reason, my microphone was a little muffled, and so YouTube has just been so frustrating lately. Hey, Asia Joe. Okay, so Monica says, yes, all clear. Esther's daughter says, yes and yes. So last week was a super important video, and it was muffled in the beginning. So last week's video was about intensive planting and plant spacing. This week is a Q&A. Hey, Mima, Hippobilly, thanks for joining me as well. Agape Field says loud and clear. Thank you, I'm in focus. I am in one of my, this is my kitchen garden. This is my larger fenced-in garden. I do some seed saving in here, but I do a lot of food production from this garden. I have so much growing. Squash, tomatoes, Swiss chard. So the bed behind me looks a little empty, but it's not. There are a couple things growing. So first and foremost, before I get started on all the awesomeness, hey Kathleen, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. That is super important. That way you'll see more of my videos. This bed behind me had radishes in it. So when I pulled those radishes, I refreshed the bed, which means I added mountain flower root boost and azomite, just sprinkled it in there. But I didn't add a lot of it because radish isn't necessarily a heavy feeder. And then I topped it off with a little bit of a layer of compost here, and then I planted, hey Pamela, thanks for joining me, in Conroe, Texas. Now, once I cleared the bed, I added a little bit of soil amendments to it. Then I topped it with compost and a mix of compost and brain is fried already, right? Coconut coir. I've already been out in the garden for a little while. So I mixed up compost and coconut coir, and I topped these beds, and then I planted Cherokee bush pumpkins. And I mentioned this on Facebook the other day that they germinated in like 2 days. They started to germinate in 2 to 3 days. So I already have little pumpkins growing already. Now the Cherokee bush pumpkin isn't specifically a bush like the Bennings green tint bush squash. It is more like 5-foot vines instead of like 20 or 30 feet vines. So it's not exactly a bush, but my bed here is 4 foot by 8 foot, and I can get a lot planted in this area instead of just planting 1 or 2 in this area. And then behind that, you've got more squash and beans and more tomatoes. And way back there, you've got cucumbers, beans, tomatoes, all sorts of deliciousness. So it is almost 9 o'clock when I'm supposed to be going live officially. And if you missed the beginning of the video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I had to go live a couple minutes early because YouTube has been weird and it isn't letting me go horizontal. It's making me go vertical. And so it was only giving me this much space to show you this beautifulness. And so I was kind of working around it, and I finally got it to go, and I was trying to save it, and it just goes, hey, let's go live right now. So you get to see me a couple minutes early today. It is Saturday in East Texas. I am thoroughly enjoying this weather, but we have had a lot of rain. So the first thing I am going to discuss with you is what I did this week, or what I plan on doing this week in some of my beds that are washed out. So some of my tomato plants, the newer tomato plants in the grow bag, for example, we had 5 inches of rain in 2 days. And then it was, I thought, oh, cool, we're going to dry out a little bit. So we had about 2 days of dry weather, and then we had more rain. So some of my tomatoes are looking a little washed out. Some of them need a little bit of a boost. And before that, we had a lot of rain as well. So I'm going to tell you what I put together to feed my plants right now. And I did have a question. Monica says, I've got rain all week and my black plum paste tomatoes are starting to crack. So if you have tomatoes that are ready to go and you have a lot of rain on the forecast, you can harvest them early and you can put them on a sunny windowsill. I actually just posted to my Facebook page as well. I should have posted to YouTube that I harvested some of my tomatoes that were almost ready and put them on a sunny windowsill so that they didn't crack. Too much rain can cause them, or too much water can cause them, the tomatoes, to crack. So you can definitely pull them up. Watermelon, for example, I just posted, I sent it in an email. Watermelon does not ripen after it's been pulled from the vine. So those are your two big differences. So I had a question in my Mostly Feral Gardeners group about what they can add to their garden area for heavy feeders like pumpkins and squash. And they said they already had my mountain flower root boost. But the problem in some cases is if you already have them established and they're growing, you want to use a liquid fertilizer for them to get the best benefit from them versus a powder or a granular feed that you would just add to it and then hope it works. So mountain flower compost tea is something I use more regularly as a liquid feed. You can see this in my back garden. You can also use worm castings and worm castings tea. You can do a side dressing of compost to your garden space. That is a really good one as well. Hey, Krista. So there's so many different options for you, and it really depends on your space and what you're doing. So what I did is I mixed up a 5-gallon bucket. Am I clear or am I not clear? Earlier I asked and everyone said everything was clear. So it could just be that I'm not clear on my computer right now, and that's why Doc is saying that I'm not clear. So if my face is clear, can you let me know? If the background is clear, can you let me know? Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and then let me know in the comments here. Monica says still all clear. Okay, good. So it's just my other connection. All right, so I keep babbling on and I haven't told you what it is, right? You're probably going, come on, Mary, get to it. All right, so for my tomatoes, for example, that are washed out, that are not producing tomatoes yet. These are more my seedlings that I just recently transplanted about 2 weeks ago or even 3 weeks ago, and they're just kind of struggling along. So what I did was I took a 5-gallon bucket. I can't show you my 5-gallon bucket because I'm sitting on it right now. And then I had to actually put this down on paper because otherwise I would forget during my live video. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so I used 2 packets of compost tea. And now my compost tea is a 655. So that is a really good fertilizer right there. I added 2 tablespoons. So if you buy the 5-gallon packet, you can just scoop 2 tablespoons out of it. I put that in a 5-gallon bucket. I put 3 teaspoons of calcium and magnesium. That is also available at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. And then I put 1/8 of a cup of blood meal. Now our blood meal is not water soluble, so you're not going to get all of the goodie out of the blood meal as you would in a liquid nitrogen feed. But that's what I needed to do for these varieties that are newer. These are not producing tomatoes yet. They're just seedlings that are struggling to grow. Nitrogen is super important for plant growth, but if too much of it can keep them from producing actual fruit. Krista says back and forth, but clear for the most part. Let me just double check something. Okay. All right. So you can just use compost tea. You can just use worm castings. Both of those are really good. You can make your own compost tea. If you don't have your own compost tea, you can purchase the stuff we carry at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. That's totally fine as well. Now, what you can also do is if your plants are potentially struggling with a calcium issue, that's where the calcium and magnesium comes into play. I don't want my future producing tomatoes to have blossom end rot. However, if I'm going to be feeding my tomato plants that are already producing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mountain flower compost tea, and I'm going to use the calcium and magnesium, and I'm going to dilute that. I don't usually use a full strength of that because I already have a lot of nutrients in there. But I do know that applying a water soluble fertilizer right now will help them with their growth, and will also help them fight diseases and pests. A healthier plant is more able to fight off diseases and pests than a disease or than a sickly plant. You'll find that that's the case in quite a few places. Hey, Caitlin, thanks for joining me. And hey, Michelle, thanks for joining me. Now, one of the questions was, what is BER? What is blossom end rot? Or I've had people send me pictures. What's wrong with my tomatoes? They're rotting. So blossom end rot is caused by a calcium deficiency. Now, if you were already experiencing, like I said, sorry, I should go back a little bit. Today is a Q&A with Mary. And so I'm answering questions that I've received this week via email or via Facebook. Michelle says, how often do you feed the compost tea? Probably about once every 4 to 6 weeks as they're already growing. I don't need that. I don't need to apply this often because I already have a good healthy soil. In my garden bags, this is brand new soil, so I do this once every 4 weeks. Krista says, how often do you fertilize? Just perfect. You guys are both on the same thing. If Krista says, I'm only making 1 gallon of tea, but having to toss because I'm going through it within a week or 2. What do you recommend? So you can cut it back. You can use a half a tablespoon of the compost tea, the mix, in a half gallon. So you don't have to use a full gallon at one time. In my brand new grow bags, for example, they don't have the big full soil that I already have in my raised beds. It's just a 5 gallon or a 10 gallon, depending on what I'm using. So I fertilize those more regularly. I don't want to over fertilize. So it really depends on what you're growing. If your bed is established. So for example, my newer beds on another garden space, if that's a brand new bed, that may require more supplementing than these beds that are already established. So these beds we put in 2022, and now it's 2025. So in 2022, they needed more help than now. So see, this information sounds so familiar. Thank you for your help. So blossom end rot was what I was getting at. Blossom end rot was so frustrating if you lost your tomatoes. You can apply the calcium and magnesium supplement that we have that's water soluble. You literally just add it to water. It is 1 teaspoon per gallon, and that will help with blossom end rot. It won't save the tomatoes that are already affected, but it will help save the future tomatoes. Now, let me explain. I need to back up because I started to explain what is blossom end rot, and that was a question I received in an email this week. Blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. Why and how does that work? Hey, Pamela, you said clear there. Sorry, I got a fly running around here. All right, so calcium is an absolutely necessary nutrient for your plants. And tomatoes, for example, plants in general, it's good for cellular health of your plant. Plants uptake calcium through water stream, through water, through the roots. And so you need water, and you need calcium, and you need healthy, strong roots. That's why I apply azomite, and I'll circle around back to that later on. So it's called the transpiration stream. It is soil water that enters through the plant roots. It becomes part of the plant tissues, and it circulates through the plant. If you have too much rain or inconsistent watering, the plant has difficulty upping that calcium. So yes, you can make your own calcium. If you apply oyster shell, for example, or eggshells to your garden this year, that calcium will be readily available for your plants next year as it breaks down in the soil. But if you have blossom end rot right now, applying eggshells isn't going to be as beneficial as using a water soluble option such as the calcium and magnesium we offer at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. So if your plants are struggling, if you have too much water, it sometimes you can't really help it. You get 5 inches of rain in 2 days, and there's not like you can say, "Hey, Mother Nature, I'm done. My garden has enough rain. You can stop now." But if you are watering your garden and you're not necessarily worrying about if you're not necessarily worrying about too much rain, if you have inconsistent watering, that's another one as well. Yes, you can use the water for that as well. But again, Pamela and Krista, if you want something that needs to work right now, these are things that you should be applying now for later. You should be applying your eggshells to your compost and then using your compost at a later time. So if you're looking for something right now, again, not 2 weeks from now, right now, you can use that product as well. Now, what is azomite, and why did I mention that earlier? Azomite is full of minerals. It is important. I mentioned this in an earlier video. You have your macronutrients, which is your NPK, and then you have your micronutrients, which is your minerals. And you need both of those in your soil. So I have found that azomite is a little more water soluble than most, but it's not completely water soluble, so you won't be able to use all of it in, say, a 5-gallon bucket, but it does work. And then it helps not just remineralize your soil, but also helps your plants uptake nutrients properly. It creates healthier plants, and studies show that when you use it in your soil, you can actually boost plant growth, plant health, and crop production. So these are some things that would be really helpful for you if you're looking to boost the health of your plants, which is why literally in almost every one of my soil health videos, I talk about DIY options for you to boost soil health. But then I also mention that I use Mountain Flower Root Boost and azomite in pretty much every one of my beds. It's really helpful. Let's see. Another question someone asked is, oh, by the way, in the description section of this video, you'll find a link to my comprehensive planting guide. It's packed with healthy and helpful information to help you grow a good garden. It also has a link to my soil amendments. You can see everything that I'm talking about here. You can see it there. The azomite is on sale right now, so if you're looking to add that to your garden, you definitely can. And then, let's see. So another good question that I had this week was about tomatoes, and what do you do when either you have too much tomatoes or you've got tomatoes that are producing at stages and you want to make sauce. So that is not a bad thing to have too many tomatoes. So there are a couple things you can do with your tomatoes, and I already mentioned to Monica earlier during the video. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. So if you have a lot of tomatoes and you're not sure what to do with them, there are so many ways that you can use them. Let's see. Dr. Green says, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With heirloom seeds, planting for bees, and growing organic as we go. Asia Joe says, the proof your knowledge and what amendments your site offers is working behind you. So this doesn't happen overnight. This happens over time. And it takes, in my opinion and in my experience, it takes 3 years to build good, healthy soil. Krista says, how long is an open package of Root Boost last? It does not expire. You can use it at any time. You can use it now and you can use it for the next 5 years. So if you buy a pound of it and you don't use it all, you can continue to use it. I would never throw it away. Let's see. So getting back to the tomatoes, you can harvest a handful of tomatoes or a whole table full of tomatoes, and you can put them on a table, on a kitchen counter. If you've got rascals like I do, orange cats that are wild and crazy, You may need to put them in a laundry room or somewhere where they can't get to them. I have found a random tomato underneath a couch because sometimes they like to pull them down and chew on them. They like tomatoes, even though they're not supposed to eat them. So that is one way you can harvest them and keep the bugs from eating them before you get a chance to eat them. And the same, what Monica had asked is if you have a lot of rain on the way and you want to prevent cracking, or just watery tomatoes, you can pull them and you can allow them to mature on the kitchen counter without having to worry about having them split or go bad. Let's see, what else? Oh, and okay, so let's say that you've got a lot and you don't know what to do with them. You can freeze tomatoes and use them at a later time for sauce. You can cook them down and make a sauce and then freeze them for a later time. Some people will dehydrate them and use them at a later time. I don't have a freeze dryer, but you can freeze dry them as well. I have made herb roasted tomatoes. Amazing. Cheryl says, gotta go. That's okay. The great thing about my videos on YouTube is they don't expire. You can watch them at a later time. You can watch the replay. Unfortunately, my live chats on Facebook, they just made a change and they will only be available for 30 days and then they will be deleted. So that's why most of the garden specific, the tutorials and things like that will always be on YouTube. Whereas my Facebook videos are just kind of sharing about different heirloom seed varieties. So I might do that here on Facebook one of these days, or YouTube on one of these days too, but whatever. So that was another question that I had, was about how to use up your tomatoes. Beans. How do you use up if you have a lot of produce? You can cook up a meal and you can freeze it. So for example, when I go to visit family, I care for my dad. I don't personally, I should back up. I have helpers that do that. But my dad has Parkinson's disease. So I go back every couple months and I manage all the things, his life, his household. And so I don't have to, but I like to prepare meals for Doc so that he can eat good food instead of fast food or protein shakes while I'm gone or canned chicken. So I will prep meals and I will freeze them for a later time so I can eat them. Or hey, summertime, it gets crazy in the garden and maybe I don't always have time to prep fresh meals. And so I will prep meals, put them in the freezer, and that way I can just take them out and heat them up at a later time. It's an ugly disease, Esther. It's not fun. So it's something that I do every couple months. I go back and I work on all the things that need to get done. So that is some of the questions that I've had today, this week. Do you have any questions for me that you might need help with in your garden? Let's see. I did mention this in my last video that someone had asked. When I intensively plant a bed, I actually want to count how many beans I planted in this bed. I've got an older video or an older picture that I posted because there's no way I can count the plants now that they're producing. I'm about to have a lot of beans. So I'm looking at recipes of how I can store my beans. When I intensively planted beans, I used a bush variety. I used several bush varieties, honestly. I used tender green, Cherokee, wax bush bean, tons of jade bush beans, and then I'm succession planting. So over here, I've got dragon tongue bush beans, and I'm about to pull those plants out, and then I'll plant something else there. So what do you do when you intensively plant beans? Do you thin them? Do you stake them? Do you give them any type of support? No, no, and no. So when I intensively plant beans, they're bush beans. So I planted probably 50 in a single 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed. And I also have cucumbers planted around the outside of that. And if you haven't seen it, LOL, I used all your bush beans. So when you intensively plant, I'm going to utilize the space as best I possibly can. Yes, I'm overcrowding, but I am planting bush beans, for example. So they are all going to just kind of crowd and they'll hold themselves up. And then that way I don't have to worry about supporting anything. And they're bush beans. They're going to harvest, they're going to produce really fast, and then they're going to be done, and I'll pull them out and plant something else. Let's see. Can't wait to see any recipes you share this year, not week. Would make a good short video. Yeah, definitely. Monica, I missed your comment. Sorry. I don't know if that was removed or you removed it yourself. Go back to let's see, Krista. Esther asked, only 3 cuke growing. So there's a couple of reasons that you don't have cucumbers growing. Number one is if it's too hot and the pollen is too sticky, it may not be transferring as well. If you have a lack of pollinators in your area, that is definitely a reason that you might have trouble with your cucumbers, and it could just be a matter of time. Cucumbers are similar to squash. You have male and female flowers. So you definitely want to check that out and see if maybe you have all male flowers and no female flowers. That could be a problem. Esther's daughter says no bees. So one of the things that if you live close to large agricultural areas that may be spraying, if you live near a golf course that is most likely spraying, you will most likely have an issue with pollinators. When I was in South Florida, we had 2 different golf courses they were a fair distance apart. I didn't live on a golf course, but they were a fair distance apart, but I really struggled with pollinators. And so that's when I started the Plant for Pollinators monthly monthly promotion, I guess you could say, promoting pollinators is to attract pollinators to your garden. And so you really need to A, plant more for pollinators, and B, you may just need to hand pollinate them. All right, so Monica asked about stink bugs. What can I do about stink bugs? They are invading my cucumbers. You've almost stumped me. You can, number one, squish them. I wear gloves because if you don't, your hands will smell disgusting. And I have gagged several times squishing stink bugs. You can companion plant to attract beneficials that will eat them. If they are eating them, you might be able to use something like BT. I think BT works for stink bugs. I'm not 100% sure, and I would need to check that out first before I tell you that for certain. You can use cayenne pepper and soapy water. You can just use straight cayenne pepper. I know, Monica, I think you were the one that had issues with squirrels, and I suggested you use cayenne pepper. I just purchased a 5-pound bag of cayenne pepper. The war is on. I am going to rid myself of some of these bad bugs, not good bugs, by using cayenne pepper. And I will explain that in a future video, or I'll probably explain it. I'll post it on Facebook and I'll post it on my YouTube. If you don't know, YouTube has a community option. And so sometimes you can see the scrolling posts that I make. Sorry, the sun is right in my eyes. So I am about to do battle with some of these bugs, the fire ants and the stink bugs and the potato beetles and the cucumber beetles. So I companion plant, which means I'm potentially reducing my bad bugs, but it's not a be all end all. It's not going to cure my pest issues. So I've got to do what I can organically, and I prefer not to use sprays. So that's where the cayenne pepper powder is going to come in handy. Sorry, I missed some of your comments because it wasn't scrolling through. Rebecca says, good morning. Is having nutrient-rich soil the main way to fertilize veggies, or do veggies also like to have a water-soluble or weekly fertilizer? If your soil is healthy and nutrient dense, yes, you don't necessarily have to fertilize on a regular basis. Earlier in the video, I mentioned, sorry, I'm trying to avoid getting the sun right in my eyeballs. Earlier in the video, I mentioned how I use a liquid fertilizer, and I use that mostly on newer crops, newer plantings. For example, you haven't seen it recently, but I have a 5-gallon grow bag garden, and that's all brand new. So that soil has not had a chance to establish a good, healthy microbiome in the bags. So for those, I definitely use a liquid fertilizer every 3 weeks. I don't do it every week. That's excessive. And really, I just look at heavy feeders. So tomatoes, squash, eggplants, those are going to need more. Lettuce, I never fertilize lettuce. There's really no reason to, and honestly, it'll make your lettuce bitter if you add too much fertilizer. So you don't have to use a purchased fertilizer. You can use comfrey and soak that and make yourself a tea. You can use compost tea that you can make yourself. You can use borage and you can soak that and make a tea for it. So there's a lot of things that you can do at home. You definitely don't have to buy anything to fertilize your plants. I'm just giving people options because not everybody has a compost pile. Not everybody has comfrey growing and not everybody has borage growing. So I like to give everybody as many options as possible. Let's see, beetles. Yeah, the beetles are tough. Let's see, Rebecca first tried sugar baby watermelon last year. Cantaloupes found out watermelons are heavy feeders. Yes, they are. You don't want to use a high nitrogen fertilizer in most of these because especially with watermelon, you don't want to have that flavor and taste. You want to have something in the middle of that, something in the medium. So I've had people ask me, well, can I use a 20-20-20 and just dilute it? The problem with that is most of those 20-20-20s, that's going to be a synthetic fertilizer, and I don't use any of that in my garden. I mentioned to you earlier the mountain flower compost tea. I use that diluted in half. So one of the 1-gallon packets, I will put in 2 gallons, and I dilute it down, and it is a 655. So that's NPK is a 655. So those are some options for you as well. Like I said, what about grubs? I had to have my backyard treated. This is where worm castings come in. I'm going to have to move. I was only going to go live for a couple minutes, but I'm right in the sun here. Oh, you can just see a little more of my garden. Now you can see some of the background here that I had. So the amazing ladies at KNC Worm Farm, they actually, as a service, they will treat fertilizing corn. I will get to that in just a second. They will treat people's yards with worm casting tea. So you take the worm castings, you make a tea of it, and they actually spray people's grass, and that helps with the grubs. Grubs, that was another one. I got a Facebook message with a picture, and I think that was from Asia as well. She said, what is this? They are grubs. They are Japanese beetle larvae, and they will completely demolish a section of your soil. You'll see a big like dead spot in your soil, and usually that means you've got grubs. They are Japanese beetle larvae. Some people like Japanese beetles. I don't like them because they eat my figs off my fig tree before I even get a chance to eat them. As far as fertilizing corn, corn is a heavy feeder. So I would use Mountain Flower Root Boost and Azomite first in your soil. And then I would use the mix that I mentioned earlier. And that is the compost tea and Azomite, or compost tea, Azomite and blood meal, compost tea, Azomite, blood meal, CalMag. It depends on what is missing with your soil. Now, recently I did a video that was not live, and it was building healthy soil. And I mentioned how I had my soil tested first, and then I worked out what I needed to add, whether I needed to add more compost, whether I needed more coconut coir in my mix, or what was possibly missing from my soil before I went and dumped a bunch of soil amendments in there. So compost is your friend. Monica says your garden is really beautiful. Thank you very much. So worm castings tea seems to be really good with grubs. You can also purchase beneficial nematodes, and it comes in a powder form where you add water and then you can treat your soil. You may not know this, but there are good nematodes and bad nematodes, and you can actually purchase good nematodes that will actually help you eradicate the grubs in your soil without having to use a chemical treatment, which is super important. KP1 says, morning, Mary. Can you touch on the importance of people knowing where and how their seeds were grown so they, oh, I missed that one. Sorry. So that they too will be successful in their garden? Absolutely. Well, I'm Mary's Heirloom Seeds. I currently offer over 1,000 varieties of heirloom seeds. What we don't grow here, we source from small farmers and seed growers within the U.S. So if you're wondering where we source our seeds, now you have it. We are in East Texas, and I get a lot of questions about, well, I'm in Florida. Can I grow your seeds in Florida? The answer to that is yes, you can. Just because you live in Florida does not mean you have to buy seeds that were grown in Florida. The important part about the important part about growing from seed is knowing when to plant your seeds. It is May 31st in Texas, in East Texas. It's going to be high 80s this week. I am not going to be planting lettuce this week. I'm not going to be planting broccoli or Brussels sprouts or corn. No, take that back. I am going to be growing corn, but I'm not going to be growing cabbage. So knowing when to plant is just as important. Let's see. Question: can grubs come in with store-bought compost or soil? That's possible. Because it is larva of beetles, it's very possible. Let's see. LOL, it was me, and Monica asked me about beetles as well, and I gave you almost the same information. So the two of you have both asked me about beetles and grubs and larvae. Let's see. Monica says I need to see if I have azomite. If not, getting some ordered. High 90s. Yeah. So again, knowing what to plant is just as important. Let's see. Jenny says you have the absolute best. You're in Florida. I personally have grown in South Florida, which is super hot and sandy soil. Then I have grown in Southern California, coastal and not mountains, but semi-rural. And then I have grown in now East Texas. So that is zone 10, zone 9, and now zone 8. But I don't go by zones. I go by my frost dates for annuals. I mentioned that so many times, and I'm sure people are like, why does she think this is such a big deal? Knowing when your frost dates are is super important to when you plant. And that's another thing. I got a question just this morning, and they said, I'm in Kentucky. I won't say specifics, but I'm in Kentucky. And can I plant it? Do I still have time to plant pineapple tomato seeds? Can I direct sow them? And so the answer to that is frost dates. If your frost date is 60 days from now, your first frost date, that's for winter, you definitely can't plant tomatoes right now. But if you have 100 days, yes, you can plant tomatoes right now. Or if you want a faster maturing tomato, you can plant something like the Czech bush tomato or the Q tomato or Moskvich tomato. You can plant a determinate variety, which will produce most of your tomatoes all at once instead of an indeterminate, which is going to go over a period of time. Another question is it too late to plant tomatoes in San Diego, zone 10? For those of you that don't know, I grew up in San Diego, so I have quite a bit of knowledge about what to plant in San Diego. And the answer to that was, it is definitely not too late to plant tomatoes in San Diego. In fact, when I go back and see my mom, I might check out her garden and plant some more seeds for her as well. It's kind of a tradition. I helped my mom plant her garden for Mother's Day. This year I did not go back for Mother's Day, so I'll be back soon, Mom. All righty, everybody. So I hope I answered your questions. I hope that you have gained some knowledge in my videos tonight. I actually have had a couple more videos on seed saving lately. The most recent one, I was in my kitchen and we were seed saving some Seminole pumpkin seeds, so that was good. There's a lot going on in the garden. Let's see, would your mom be okay if you shared pics of her garden? If not, that's okay. Actually, no, she doesn't mind. She sends me pictures all the time. I love pictures from my mom all the time. And I will definitely share with you. I can actually share with you the garden space that I planted for her last year. All of her gardens are in big, tall those metal troughs. And there's a picture where I planted all the things, and then she keeps sending me pictures when they're like tall. So I'll share those pictures with you. She doesn't mind. All right, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed my Saturday live chat. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you on a Saturday when it's not hot as the surface of the sun out here. It is starting to warm up, and now I have a lot to get done in the garden. Alrighty, everybody. If you have any questions, send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com, and I will answer for you. Give me a little bit. It's Saturday, so I'm not going to be on my computer all day. I'll be out in the garden, and I will be enjoying myself. I will have more recipes, I promise. If you've got questions, like I said, send me an email. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And just as a reminder, in the description section of this video, you'll find a link to my comprehensive planting guide and all of the amazing seeds we offer at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, as well as soil amendments. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and happy planting.